Welcome to another sacred voyage into the timeless ocean of divine wisdom, the Śrīmad Bhāgavata. In today's spiritual journey, we travel deep into the ancient and holy land of Naimisharanya, where enlightened sages gather with one purpose, to uncover the highest truth and the eternal path to liberation. Here, Suta Goswami begins revealing the divine glory of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata, a scripture revered as a beacon of devotion, wisdom, and spiritual liberation, especially in the challenging age of Kali. But our journey does not end there. We follow the footsteps of Devarshi Narada, the eternal messenger of devotion, as he travels across the earth and witnesses the gradual decline of righteousness in Kali Yuga. Everywhere he looks, he sees suffering, confusion, and a growing distance from spiritual truth. Then, beside the sacred banks of the Yamuna, Narada encounters a sight both mysterious and deeply moving, a beautiful young woman named Bhakti, accompanied by her two elderly sons, Jnana, the embodiment of divine knowledge, and Vairagya, the spirit of renunciation. What happened to Bhakti and her two sons? Why had divine knowledge and renunciation become weak in the age of Kali? And what secret does their encounter with Narada reveal about the power of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata? Their story carries a profound message, one that is not confined to ancient times, but speaks directly to the struggles of the modern human heart. So, listen with an open heart and a peaceful mind. May these eternal teachings awaken devotion within your soul, wisdom within your mind, and peace within your heart. Now, let us step into this sacred world of divine wisdom and begin the immortal narration of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata Māhātmya. The extraordinary meeting of Devarshi Narada and Bhakti. Let us begin this sacred journey by bowing with reverence to the Supreme Consciousness, the eternal source of bliss and divine knowledge, Lord Shri Krishna. It is by His will that the entire universe comes into existence. By His divine power, creation is sustained, and through His eternal cosmic play, everything ultimately returns to Him. He alone is the supreme force capable of freeing the human soul from every sorrow, suffering, and affliction that surrounds it, both from within and without. Now, let us remember another extraordinary soul, Sri Shukdeva Muni, whose very life was a magnificent example of renunciation and spiritual realization. It is said that even before entering into the ordinary rituals and responsibilities of worldly life, Shukdeva had already chosen the path of complete detachment. One day, without hesitation or worldly attachment, he walked away from the ashram of his father, Maharshi Vyas. Seeing his beloved son suddenly leaving, Vyas' heart was filled with anguish. He ran after him, calling out, "My son! Where are you going?" But Shukdeva had already reached a state of consciousness where worldly relationships could no longer bind the soul. And remarkably, it was as though the trees of the forest themselves answered Vyas' call. This beautiful episode reveals the extraordinary state of Shukdeva's consciousness. His awareness had expanded beyond the limitations of an individual body, identity, or relationship. He had become established in the vision of the Supreme Self present in all beings. To such a liberated soul, Sri Shukdeva Muni, we offer our deepest and repeated salutations. And now, this sacred spiritual lineage carries us onward to the holy land of Naimisharanya. There, countless sages and saints had gathered together, immersed in listening to the divine glories of the Supreme Lord. Among them was the revered sage Shaunaka, who approached Suta Goswami with profound humility and a heart overflowing with spiritual curiosity. Shaunaka Rishi said, "O Suta Goswami, you possess the wisdom capable of destroying the darkness of ignorance within the human heart, just as the blazing sun effortlessly drives away the darkness of night. Please tell us a story that does more than delight our ears, a story that can truly satisfy the soul." The sages were not gathered merely to hear an entertaining tale. Their questions came from a deeper concern. They wanted to understand how humanity could find its way in Kali Yuga, an age in which the mind was increasingly becoming trapped in desire, greed, ego, attachment, and countless other disturbances. They asked, how does true knowledge deepen through devotion? How does renunciation free a person from the chains of worldly attachment? And what is that sacred path by which devotees can rise above the attraction of Maya and move toward the supreme truth? Then the sages turned their attention to the difficult nature of Kali Yuga. They observed that with the passage of time, righteousness and noble conduct were gradually becoming weaker. Human beings were surrounded by suffering, and while endlessly chasing external pleasures, they were losing the peace that could only be found within. So they asked, in such an age, what is the highest and most powerful remedy, one that can cleanse the impurities of the heart, transform human nature toward divinity, and ultimately lead the soul to the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna? They wanted Suta Goswami to reveal a spiritual practice that would not merely fulfill worldly desires, but would reconnect human life with its highest and ultimate purpose. For the world contains many things that can fulfill desires. Imagine possessing a precious jewel capable of granting immense material wealth. Or imagine discovering a miraculous tree that could provide whatever worldly object one desired. Such things may appear extraordinary, but even they have limits. The grace of a true spiritual master, however, is beyond comparison. When a realized guru becomes pleased and showers grace upon a sincere seeker, he can point that seeker toward the supreme abode, a destination that even great yogis strive to reach after years of intense spiritual discipline. Suta Goswami understood the depth behind the sages' questions. He realized that their inquiry was not born merely from intellectual curiosity. Their questions arose from faith, devotion, and love for the Supreme Lord. He therefore said, O Shaunaka, your hearts are filled with faith and love for the Lord. Therefore, I shall reveal to you the essence of that supreme truth which can lift a human being beyond the endless fear of birth and death. He then spoke of a spiritual path capable of continuously awakening devotion within the heart and becoming one of the simplest and most powerful ways to please Lord Sri Krishna. And that path is hearing the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam and deeply contemplating its divine message. In Kali Yuga, human existence can seem like standing perilously close to the mouth of a gigantic serpent of time. Birth and death, fear and attachment, desire and karma, these forces continually tighten their grip upon the living being. It was precisely to liberate humanity from this fear that Sri Shukdeva Muni narrated the nectar-like story of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam to King Parikshit. Listening to the Bhagavatam is not merely a religious ritual. It is a spiritual river that gradually washes away the accumulated restlessness of the mind. And even the awakening of a genuine desire to hear the divine stories of the Lord is considered something extraordinary. It is said that when the accumulated blessings and auspicious impressions of countless lives begin to bear fruit, a deep spiritual thirst awakens within the heart, a thirst not for worldly entertainment, but for the divine narration of the Supreme Lord. When Sri Shukdeva Muni finally sat before King Parikshit to narrate the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, even the celestial beings came to know of this extraordinary spiritual occasion. The gods arrived carrying a vessel filled with Amrita, the nectar of immortality. They approached Shukdeva Muni with a proposal. Their idea was simple: they would give King Parikshit the celestial nectar of immortality, and in exchange, they wished to receive the nectar of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. From their perspective, it seemed like a perfect exchange. On one side, the nectar of the heavenly realms. On the other, the nectar of the Bhagavatam. But Shukdeva Muni rejected their proposal. Why? Because the difference between these two nectars was not merely in their names, it was in their very purpose and effect. One represents the preservation of the physical body from death. The other awakens the soul to its eternal spiritual identity. One remains within the boundaries of material existence. The other carries the seeker toward the supreme reality. Therefore, Shukdeva Muni refused the offer. He understood a profound truth. It is not enough to possess the nectar of immortality. One must also possess the heart capable of receiving the nectar of divine love. Without genuine devotion to the Lord, the deepest sweetness of the Bhagavatam remains beyond one's reach. That is why the divine narration of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is described as something extraordinarily rare, even for the celestial beings. Because the Bhagavatam is not merely meant to be heard. It is meant to transform the heart. It is not merely meant to provide knowledge. It is meant to awaken devotion. And when devotion truly awakens within the heart, knowledge begins to shine from within like the rising sun. Renunciation, too, no longer means running away from the world. Instead, it becomes the natural state of one who has begun to recognize the higher truth beyond worldly illusion. And now, from this profound understanding, begins one of the most fascinating episodes of the entire Bhagavata tradition. The extraordinary meeting between Devarshi Narada and Bhakti. It is a meeting where the suffering of Kali Yuga stands face to face with the eternal power of devotion, divine knowledge, and renunciation. A meeting filled with mystery. A meeting filled with sorrow. And ultimately, a meeting carrying a message of hope for every seeker. So, let us now enter that sacred episode. Let us journey to the banks of the holy Yamuna and discover what Devarshi Narada witnessed there. Something so mysterious and profound that even Narada himself was moved into deep contemplation. When even Lord Brahma weighed the glory of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. The true greatness of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is not something that can be understood merely through words. Its transformative power was witnessed in the life of King Parikshit himself. When death stood only days away, King Parikshit turned completely toward the divine and listened to the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Through its wisdom and devotion, the darkness of fear dissolved, and he attained the highest spiritual liberation. Witnessing this extraordinary transformation, even Lord Brahma was filled with wonder. A profound question arose in his mind. What is it about the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam that enables a human being to break free from the chains of worldly existence? Determined to understand its greatness, Brahmaji conducted a remarkable spiritual experiment in Satyaloka. On one side, he placed the various spiritual practices traditionally prescribed for attaining liberation. On the other side, he placed the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. It was almost as if the very paths of spiritual realization had been placed upon a divine balance. And then came the astonishing moment. The balance moved. The many spiritual disciplines placed on one side became lighter, while the side bearing the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam descended with unmistakable weight. Everyone was astonished. The message was profound. This was not simply a declaration that one scripture was superior to another. It pointed toward a deeper spiritual mystery, the extraordinary power of the Bhagavatam to unite knowledge with devotion and devotion with ultimate liberation. The sages therefore recognized that in the difficult age of Kali Yuga, when long periods of austerity, severe penance, and complex spiritual disciplines had become increasingly difficult for ordinary people, sincerely hearing and contemplating the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam could become one of the most powerful paths toward God realization. And when this sacred narration is heard with faith, concentration, and devotion according to the traditional 7-day Bhagavata Saptaha, it can awaken the dormant flame of devotion within the heart. But there is another fascinating chapter hidden within this tradition. The method and spiritual significance of hearing the Bhagavatam over 7 days was explained to Devarshi Narada by the 4 divine Kumaras, Sanka, Sanandana, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumara. This knowledge was not entirely new to Narada. He had previously received the wisdom of the Bhagavatam directly from Lord Brahma. Yet the deeper secret, the specific method, sequence, and spiritual power of hearing the Bhagavatam within 7 days, was revealed to him by the Sankadi sages. And this naturally gives rise to another question. How did Narada, the eternally liberated sage who wandered freely throughout the universe, come to meet these four Kumaras? And what happened that made a great renunciate like Narada so deeply interested in this special method of hearing the Bhagavatam? The restlessness within Narada. Maharshi Shaunaka once asked Suta Goswami about this very mystery. Devarshi Narada is always free from worldly bondage, wandering through the universe while singing the glories of the Lord. What extraordinary circumstance brought him face to face with the Sankadi sages? And what did they reveal that awakened such deep interest in him? Suta Goswami replied, O Shaunaka, this was no ordinary event. It is a profound story of Bhakti, a story that Sri Shukdeva Muni once revealed to me as a sacred and deeply confidential teaching. Now, I shall share that divine episode with you. And so, the story begins. Once, the four Kumaras, Sanka, Sanandana, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumara, arrived in Vishalpuri with the intention of engaging in sacred association and spiritual discourse. Their lives were utterly pure. Their minds were untouched by worldly attraction. Their vision remained fixed upon the eternal truth. It was there that they suddenly noticed Devarshi Narada. But something seemed different. Very different. The Narada they saw that day was not the radiant, cheerful sage who usually traveled from world to world singing the holy names of the Lord. His face was clouded with concern. His steps were unusually hurried, almost as though he were trying to escape from some troubling thought. The sage whose very presence usually carried joy and divine music now seemed burdened by a deep sorrow. The Kumaras stopped him. They asked, O Devarshi, where has your usual radiance disappeared? Why do you appear so disturbed? Where are you rushing in such haste? And from where have you just returned? Then they continued. Seeing you like this, one might think that you have lost everything you possessed. But you are a great soul who has risen above attachment, possessiveness, and worldly illusion. What, then, could possibly have disturbed your heart so deeply? Narada remained silent for a few moments. Then, at last, he opened his heart. He said, I came to earth to discover whether there still remained places where genuine peace and the light of Dharma could be found. I traveled through many sacred pilgrimage sites. I visited Pushkar. I journeyed to Prayaga. I walked upon the holy land of Kashi. I traveled along the banks of the Godavari. I visited Haridwar and Kurukshetra. I also journeyed to sacred places such as Sri Ranga and Setubandha. I believed that in these holy places, I would witness the living presence of Dharma within humanity. But the more I saw, the heavier my heart became. Narada's voice grew more serious. The influence of Kali Yuga is spreading across the earth. Adharma appears to have found strength, while Dharma seems to be gradually losing its power. Truth is increasingly being replaced by deception. The importance of austerity and self-discipline is declining. The purity of both thought and conduct is becoming weaker. Compassion and charity, once regarded as noble virtues, are becoming increasingly rare. Most people have forgotten the higher purpose of human life. Instead, they remain absorbed in the struggle for survival, comfort, possessions, and the satisfaction of the senses. Falsehood, laziness, ignorance, and misfortune seem to have cast their shadows over human existence. Then Narada's voice became even more sorrowful. But what pained me most was seeing that even some who wear the robes of Dharma have moved far away from its true spirit. Those who call themselves renunciates and saints may appear detached outwardly, yet within their hearts, the attraction toward wealth, pleasure, possessions, and worldly comforts remains. The clothing may speak of renunciation, but the heart may still be filled with desire. Narada then described the changing condition of family life and society. Even within families, harmony and moral values are becoming weaker. Self-interest is overpowering relationships. The desire for wealth has become so powerful that people are sometimes willing to compromise even their closest relationships and deepest values. Husbands and wives are increasingly caught in conflict, and peace within household life is becoming rare. Then Narada turned his attention toward the places that had once been regarded as centers of spiritual discipline. Even the ashrams of sages, sacred pilgrimage sites, and the banks of holy rivers no longer seem to possess the same spiritual dignity they once carried. Many ancient temples and sacred places have also faced difficulties and decline. There was no anger in Narada's words. There was only compassion. The pain of a great soul witnessing humanity slowly drifting away from its spiritual roots. He continued. It seems as though many streams of spiritual practice have begun to dry up beneath the scorching heat of Kali Yuga. The true discipline of yoga has become rare. Great realized souls are difficult to find. True spiritual knowledge is declining. And selfless righteous action has become increasingly uncommon. Then Narada described another disturbing transformation. People have begun to view almost every aspect of life through the lens of profit and transaction. Even food, which should satisfy one of life's most basic needs, is increasingly treated merely as a commodity. Knowledge, which was once shared as a sacred form of service and spiritual discipline, is increasingly exchanged for wealth. And in the struggle to earn a living, people are sometimes turning toward occupations and methods that earlier generations would have regarded as symbols of moral decline. Narada's voice carried deep sorrow. He had traveled across the earth. He had visited sacred rivers and holy cities. He had observed humanity closely. Yet everywhere he looked, he saw the same troubling pattern. The outer world was becoming increasingly busy, but the inner world was becoming increasingly empty. And this was what tormented his heart. But now, sitting before him were four extraordinary sages, souls who remained rooted in eternal truth, untouched by the changing currents of the world. Perhaps Narada was beginning to realize that the answer to his anguish would not be found in another pilgrimage, another sacred place, or another external remedy. Perhaps the answer lay somewhere much deeper. Within the nectar of Bhakti. A divine force capable of awakening light even in the darkest age. And this is where an extraordinary chapter begins, a chapter in which Devarshi Narada is about to encounter the mysterious connection between Bhakti, Jnana, and Vairagya. A revelation that would not only transform his understanding of Kali Yuga, but would also unveil, in an even deeper way, the incomparable glory of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. The mystery is about to unfold. Devarshi Narada meets Bhakti on the banks of the Yamuna. As Devarshi Narada traveled across the earth, witnessing the growing influence of Kali Yuga, his heart became increasingly troubled. Wherever he went, he saw the same painful transformation, the sacred flame of Dharma growing weaker, while attachment, illusion, greed, and worldly desires seemed to grow stronger. During this spiritual journey, Narada eventually arrived at the banks of the holy Yamuna, the very river whose sacred shores had once witnessed the enchanting childhood pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna. But on this particular day, the Yamuna's banks were destined to become much more than a place of pilgrimage. They were about to become the setting for a mysterious spiritual revelation. As Narada approached the river, an extraordinary sight suddenly caught his attention. A young woman was sitting alone. She was extraordinarily beautiful, yet there was not even a trace of happiness upon her face. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. Her heart appeared weighed down by profound sorrow. Beside her lay two elderly men. Both were extremely weak and exhausted. Their bodies appeared almost lifeless, their breathing was heavy, and their once vibrant presence seemed to have completely faded away. The young woman would gently touch their faces, trying to awaken them. At times she would call out to them. And then, overcome by helplessness, she would sit beside them and weep. It seemed as though she herself was desperately searching for someone, some divine power that could rescue her from this mysterious suffering. Her eyes repeatedly wandered in every direction, as though she were silently asking the universe, "Who will come to help me?" Around her stood several radiant women. They were caring for her with great affection. One gently fanned her. Another tried to comfort her. Others repeatedly spoke words of reassurance, attempting to calm the fear within her heart. From a distance, Narada watched this strange scene in silence. A beautiful young woman. Two exhausted old men lying beside her. And a group of divine-looking women caring for her. The scene was not merely unusual. It was deeply mysterious. Narada's curiosity was awakened. He slowly walked toward them. And the moment the young woman saw the great sage standing before her, something changed in her eyes. A ray of hope appeared. She immediately rose and approached him with folded hands. Her voice trembled with emotion as she said, "O Māhātmya, please stay with me for a few moments. Help me lighten the unbearable burden that rests upon my heart. The very sight of a great saint like you has the power to wash away the accumulated sorrow and suffering of countless lives." She continued, "Your words can surely bring peace to my troubled mind. Perhaps today I am truly blessed that your sacred feet have brought you here. The company of great saints is not easily obtained." Narada looked upon her with compassion. He gently asked, "Devi, your condition appears most extraordinary. First, tell me, who are you? Who are these two elderly men lying beside you? And who are these divine women serving you? What sorrow has brought you to such a troubled state?" The young woman took a deep breath. Then she revealed her identity. "Devarshi, my name is Bhakti." Narada listened attentively. She then pointed toward the two elderly men. "These are my sons, Jnana and Vairagya, knowledge and renunciation. Through the harsh influence of time, they have been reduced to this condition. Once they were radiant, powerful, and full of vitality. But now the relentless passage of time seems to have exhausted them from within." Then Bhakti looked toward the divine women surrounding her. "And the women you see around me are not ordinary women. They are the divine personifications of sacred rivers, Ganga and other holy rivers. They have come here to serve me." Yet despite all these divine beings surrounding her, Bhakti's face remained troubled. She sighed deeply. "So many divine powers are here serving me, and yet my heart knows no peace. That is the greatest sorrow of all." After a brief pause, she continued, "O great sage, if you are willing to hear my story, then please listen carefully. My story is not new. My journey has traveled alongside humanity through the ages. But today, I wish for you to understand the mystery of my present condition, and show me a way out of this suffering." And then Bhakti began to tell the story of her extraordinary journey. The journey of Bhakti through the ages. "I was born in the southern lands," she said. "The land of Dravida gave me birth, and Karnataka nurtured me. Later, when I reached Maharashtra, I was honored and embraced with great love. But then, the times began to change. When I reached Gujarat, the influence of Kali Yuga began to affect me as well. Slowly, my strength began to fade. Hypocrisy and outward show became increasingly powerful, drowning out the pure voice of genuine devotion. After living under such conditions for a long time, even I began to appear old and weak. Along with my two sons, Jnana and Vairagya, I became increasingly frail and powerless. Then something changed. For the first time, a spark of hope appeared in her voice. But then, one day, I reached Vrindavan. And the moment I touched that sacred land, something extraordinary happened. It was as though someone had breathed life back into my soul. My lost radiance returned. My body became youthful once again. And the beauty that had once defined my very existence returned to my face. Bhakti paused and looked at herself with a mixture of wonder and happiness. But then her eyes fell upon her two sons. The smile disappeared. They were still lying there. Old. Weak. Exhausted. Their consciousness remained dim. Her joy once again turned into sorrow. But my happiness remains incomplete, she said. I have become young again, yet my sons remain old and powerless. When I see them lying in this condition, my own heart becomes heavy with grief. Sometimes I wonder whether I should leave Vrindavan and travel somewhere else. But wherever I go, the same question follows me. She looked directly at Narada. Her voice was filled with bewilderment. We are three members of the same family. We have existed together, traveled together, and our very nature is deeply connected. Then how has this happened? How can the mother become young while her sons become old? Normally, as time passes, a mother grows older while her children remain younger. But here, everything seems to have been turned upside down. Bhakti's eyes filled with sorrow. I constantly think about this mystery, and it has left me deeply troubled. O Devarshi, you are no ordinary sage. You have traveled through countless realms. You understand the deepest mysteries of yoga, knowledge, and spiritual realization. So please, out of your compassion, tell me, why has this happened to us? Narada listened quietly to every word. But he did not merely see the strange scene before him. He saw the spiritual truth hidden behind it. With his divine insight, the Devarshi immediately understood the reason behind Bhakti's unusual condition. He gently reassured her. Devi, you have no reason to blame yourself. The cause of your suffering is clear to me. This condition is deeply connected with the influence of Kali Yuga. Therefore, you must not allow despair to enter your heart. Then Narada spoke with unwavering confidence. Wherever true devotion exists, the grace of Lord Sri Hari inevitably follows. Your welfare is certain. Suta Goswami tells us that Devarshi Narada did not need much time to understand the mystery. In an instant, he recognized the hidden reason behind the strange condition of Bhakti, Jnana, and Vairagya. But this was only the beginning. A much greater mystery now stood before him. How could Jnana and Vairagya be awakened once again? How could Bhakti's sorrow finally come to an end? And most importantly, how would the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam restore the lost radiance of devotion, divine knowledge, and renunciation in the dark age of Kali? The answer to this profound mystery is about to unfold in the next chapter of this divine narration. Narada reveals the cause behind Bhakti's decline. Devarshi Narada looked at Bhakti with deep compassion and spoke gently. Devi, calm your heart and listen carefully. The root of your suffering lies in the very nature of Kali Yuga. This is an age in which the light of righteousness, self-discipline, spiritual practice, and austerity is gradually becoming weaker. The outer world may appear to be advancing, but the human being within is slowly drifting farther away from his spiritual roots. People are moving away from truth and Dharma, becoming increasingly entangled in deception, selfishness, and worldly ambition. Their actions are hardening their hearts from within. And there is something even more painful to witness. Those who strive to live virtuously often appear to suffer, while those who live through greed and wrongdoing may seem to prosper. Narada's voice became more serious. In such an age, if a person can preserve wisdom, discrimination, and inner calm even while surrounded by adversity, understand that such a person has gained something far greater than worldly success, true spiritual knowledge. He then pointed toward the condition of the earth. The burden of unrighteousness and harmful actions continues to increase. As time passes, the spiritual beauty of the world seems to fade. Where there should be purity, we often see selfishness. Where there should be harmony, we find unrest. Then Narada turned toward Bhakti. There was a time when you were honored and cherished along with your two sons, Jnana and Vairagya. But people who became absorbed in worldly pleasures gradually turned their eyes away from you. Those who should have sought your company became so fascinated by the attractions of the material world that they forgot you altogether. Their neglect weakened you, and as the years passed, your two sons became almost lifeless. But then a glow of hope appeared in Narada's voice. And then you reached Vrindavan. The glory of that sacred land is unlike any other. The memories of Lord Sri Krishna's divine pastimes still seem to breathe through its atmosphere. There, you recovered the radiance you had lost. It was as though a new life force had entered your being. Your consciousness awakened, your strength returned, and you once again became youthful and radiant. That is why Vrindavan is not merely a geographical place. It is a sacred land where devotion can awaken again. Blessed indeed is that holy Dhamma, where Bhakti continues to dance in the presence of divine love. Narada then looked toward Jnana and Vairagya. But the condition of your two sons is different. Even in Vrindavan, the people of the world do not show the same interest in knowledge and renunciation. Therefore, their weakened condition has not completely disappeared. Yet, because they are in the sacred presence of the Lord, they still experience a subtle peace. Perhaps that is why they are not completely unconscious, but appear to be lying in a deep spiritual sleep. Bhakti listened carefully. But Narada's words awakened another question within her heart. Bhakti asks a profound question. Bhakti looked at Narada and asked, Devarshi, if Kali Yuga is so destructive, why did King Parikshit allow it to remain upon the earth? From the moment it appeared, it seems as though the true value and essence of so many aspects of life began to disappear. Things that once guided human beings toward dharma and spiritual welfare gradually began losing their influence. And there is another question that troubles me even more. How can the compassionate Lord Sri Hari tolerate such widespread decline and unrighteousness? Does he not see the suffering of his devotees and living beings? Please resolve this doubt for me. Your words have already brought great peace to my heart. Now I hope you will also reveal the secret behind this mystery. Narada smiled gently. You have asked sincerely, so listen with an open heart. Your question is completely justified, and I shall explain the reason. The burden upon your heart will gradually become lighter. Why was Kali Yuga allowed to remain? Narada began to explain. When Lord Sri Krishna completed his earthly pastimes and departed for his eternal abode, the influence of Kali Yuga began to enter the world. After this, King Parikshit, the protector of Dharma, was traveling throughout his kingdom. One day, he encountered Kali. Kali became frightened and surrendered before the king. King Parikshit had the power to destroy him completely. Yet Parikshit was not merely a ruler who punished wrongdoing. He was wise, far-sighted, and deeply devoted to Dharma. The king reflected. In an age where spiritual results that once required tremendous austerity and prolonged discipline can be attained simply through remembrance and chanting of the Lord's holy name, perhaps it would not be right to eliminate this age completely. And therein lies one of the greatest paradoxes of Kali Yuga. It is an age filled with spiritual challenges, but hidden within it is an extraordinary opportunity. the opportunity to take shelter of the divine name. King Parikshit recognized this unique blessing. He understood that countless souls who would be born in this difficult age could find a remarkably simple path toward spiritual liberation through the remembrance and chanting of God's name. And so, although Kali Yuga was filled with countless defects, it was allowed to remain. Because even in the darkest age, one door to divine grace remained wide open. When the essence of spiritual practices began to fade. But as time passed, humanity began to misuse even this opportunity. Narada continued. As selfishness and unrighteousness increased, the true essence of many great spiritual traditions also began to weaken. He offered several examples. The divine narration of the Bhagavatam exists to awaken love for God within the human heart. Yet, in some places, even this sacred tradition became reduced to a means of livelihood. When the purpose of spiritual narration shifts from awakening the soul to earning money, its deeper spiritual impact naturally begins to fade. The same can happen with sacred pilgrimage places. When people bring sin, disbelief, exploitation, and immoral behavior into places that were once centers of devotion, the experience of their sacredness can also become diminished. Consider austerity. True austerity requires the purification of desire. But when the mind continues to burn with lust, anger, greed, and endless craving, and a person merely adopts the outward appearance of a renunciate, where can the true spiritual radiance of austerity come from? Narada continued. The same is true of meditation and yoga. To practice genuine meditation, the mind must first learn discipline. But when a person cannot control his own thoughts, when greed and ego govern his actions, and when sincere study of the scriptures is gradually abandoned, meditation too can become nothing more than an outward performance. Then Narada turned toward the decline of spiritual knowledge. Even the world of knowledge has not remained untouched by this decline. True wisdom is not merely the ability to memorize scriptures or discuss philosophical ideas. The ultimate purpose of knowledge is to help a human being recognize his true nature. But when scholars become just as deeply entangled in worldly pleasures, possessions, family attachments, and personal ambitions as everyone else, their knowledge can no longer effectively illuminate the path to inner freedom. Having children and building a family may be a natural part of human life. But if the entire purpose of existence becomes limited to the body, family, possessions, and pleasure, then the journey toward spiritual realization remains incomplete. Then Narada spoke one of the deepest truths of all. There is a profound difference between wearing the outer form of devotion and truly surrendering one's heart to God. Where tradition survives but love disappears. Where religious symbols remain but character disappears. Where the divine name is spoken by the lips but the heart has no place for the Lord. There, the true essence of bhakti gradually begins to disappear. Bhakti listened silently. Something within her had begun to settle. At last, she understood. Her old age was not merely a personal tragedy. It was a reflection of an entire age, a time when humanity had accepted the outward form of devotion but gradually pushed knowledge and renunciation away from its daily life. And then came the miracle of Vrindavan. Vrindavan had restored Bhakti's youth because divine love was still alive there. But her two sons remained asleep. Jnana was weak. Vairagya was weak. And now the great question remained. Could Devarshi Narada awaken them? Could the sleeping power of knowledge and renunciation be restored? Could Bhakti once again become complete? The answer would emerge through one of the most powerful spiritual remedies of Kali Yuga. The sacred hearing of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And thus begins an extraordinary spiritual journey in which the divine nectar of the Bhagavatam will once again awaken Bhakti, Jnana, and Vairagya, bringing light to hearts living in the darkness of Kali Yuga. Bhakti welcomes Devarshi Narada with reverence. Devarshi Narada looked upon Bhakti with compassion and began to explain. Devi, when we witness the conditions of this age, it is not right to place the blame upon any single individual. This is the very nature of Kali Yuga. Under its influence, the veil of illusion falls over human discrimination, and the path of Dharma begins to appear increasingly difficult. Yet there is indeed a profound mystery. Lord Sri Hari is infinitely compassionate. He dwells within the hearts of his devotees and, through his divine presence, sustains the entire universe. Seeing everything that is happening, why does he still allow this age to unfold according to its nature? The answer lies in a deeper truth. God does not look only at the darkness and defects of the present age. He also sees the extraordinary opportunity hidden within Kali Yuga. For in this very age, a soul can take shelter of the divine name and return to the Lord through a path remarkably simple compared with the difficult spiritual disciplines of earlier ages. These words touched Bhakti deeply. Suta Goswami tells us that as Bhakti heard this profound truth from Narada's lips, the doubts that had weighed upon her heart for so long began to melt away. Her questions were finally receiving answers. And within her heart, something that had almost disappeared began to awaken again. Hope. Bhakti looked at Devarshi Narada with profound reverence. Her eyes filled with emotion as she spoke. O Devarshi! Today, I consider myself extraordinarily blessed. Your darshan and your divine company have begun to dispel the darkness that has surrounded my life for so long. It feels as though, after wandering through darkness for countless years, I have finally found the guide who can show me the way. Meeting a true saint in this world is not an ordinary event. The sight of their sacred presence, the opportunity to hear their words, and even a few moments spent in their company can sometimes transform the direction of a person's life in ways that years of spiritual practice may fail to accomplish. Bhakti then remembered the countless lives that had already been transformed through Narada's grace. She said, "The world has witnessed the power of your compassion before. Through one of your divine teachings, you awakened such profound devotion in the heart of the young Prahlad that he rose above both the fear and attraction of the material world. And in the life of Dhruv, your guidance brought about a transformation so extraordinary that an ordinary child attained eternal fame and an exalted spiritual position. Wherever you travel, you do not merely speak about spiritual knowledge. Where you go, hope is born. Where you go, devotion awakens. Where you go, people remember the true purpose of their lives. You are the divine son born from the mind of Lord Brahma, and you are the compassionate Devarshi who travels from realm to realm carrying the holy name of the Lord and spreading his divine message for the welfare of all beings." Bhakti folded her hands before Narada. Her eyes were filled with gratitude. With deep humility, she bowed and said, "O Devarshi Narada, I offer my heartfelt reverence at your sacred feet. Today, through your darshan, my life has truly become blessed." And thus, the extraordinary meeting between Bhakti and Devarshi Narada was far more than a meeting between two characters in an ancient story. It was a profound revelation of an eternal spiritual truth. When Bhakti becomes weak in the world, the saints reach out and hold her hand. When knowledge falls asleep, the Guru awakens it. And when renunciation disappears from human life, the divine narration of Lord Sri Hari brings it back to life. This was the sacred turning point from which the next chapter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata begins. For Bhakti was about to discover the path that could awaken her two sleeping sons, Jnana and Vairagya. And that path would reveal the extraordinary transformative power of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata. Thus concludes Chapter 1 of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata, the meeting of Devarshi Narada and Bhakti. If this divine story and the nectar-like message of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata has touched your heart, then don't let this spiritual journey end here. Person with folded hands sparkles. Person with folded hands, like this video and share it with your loved ones, so that the light of devotion to Lord Krishna and the timeless wisdom of Sanatan Dharma can reach more and more hearts. Bell, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you never miss the next chapter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavata Māhātmya. Speech balloon comment Radhe Radhe or Jai Shri Krishna below and offer your heartfelt devotion at the lotus feet of the Lord. May the divine grace of Sri Hari fill your life with the light of Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya and inner peace. Hibiscus, person with folded hands. Jai Shri Krishna. Radhe Radhe. Person with folded hands sparkles.